Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Jeffrey Kalzinski, and today for my tech talk, I'll be discussing the use of low fidelity task trainers for forward deployed medical skills sustainment. A little bit of background on me. I'm an emergency department physician currently stationed with 2nd Medical Battalion at Camp Lejeune, and I also do a lot of work with our en route care teams as their medical director. This project is going to focus on a very simple problem: maintaining proficiency in critical combat casualty care skills when deployed providers have limited patient volume, limited training resources, and limited access to the traditional simulation equipment that we're so used to. So the problem, and I inserted a photo of an Army medical encampment from quite a while ago, just to demonstrate that this has been an issue not just in our most recent wars. In deployed and austere environments, opportunities to perform these critical procedures are really infrequent as well as unpredictable. As a result, the procedural skills of the providers can deteriorate over time if they're not practiced and trained regularly. This is particularly concerning and important for high acuity, low frequency procedures such as hemorrhage control and surgical airway management. Unfortunately, many of the simulation devices that are currently used for training are expensive, they're heavy, they're difficult to transport, and almost never available during deployment. Additionally, the unit training budgets may not support purchasing or replacing of commercial simulation equipment. In all of the environments I've been a part of, the purchasing and replacing of the commercial simulation equipment is frequently done through a hospital rather than a unit that actually deploys. So that creates budgetary issues when the deploying unit is no longer in proximity to the hospital. What all this does is creates a gap between the skills we need to maintain and the resources that are available to maintain them downrange. So one potential solution to the problem I just posed is the use of low fidelity task trainers. We've all seen low fidelity task trainers taking BLS or ALS courses with the Resusci Annie mannequins for CPR. But what I'm more specifically talking about is some of these low fidelity task trainers built using readily available materials, such as the lateral canthotomy model that you see in the left lower photo of the screen. These self-built low fidelity task trainers become inexpensive, lightweight, and easy to reproduce in the field. The key here is rather than trying to perfectly replicate human anatomy, they focus on allowing the repetition of the critical procedural steps for the procedure. The goal here is not realism for realism's sake. The goal is skill sustainment. This next slide is a great example of a low fidelity model in action, and one that's particularly applicable to the military environment. This is from a publication by Bates et al., where they actually went to a butcher shop and picked up some cheap cuts of meat, utilized a syringe and an IV tubing in order to be able to inject blood into the actual wounds created in the meat models. Um, Really, the key here is this is a great example of a low fidelity trainer that can be constructed from common materials that are available anywhere you have a grocery store and a roll to facility. The key advantage with these trainers is, you can assemble them almost anywhere, and you don't need expensive specialized equipment or really any logistical support. This allowed the training to occur at the point of need rather than only where personnel have access to a well-funded and well-supplied simulation center. So I hope by now that I've convinced you that one of the large pieces of value in the low fidelity task trainer is the ease of construction and ease and portability for it to be used in a forward deployed setting. But one of the other really compelling aspects of this work is the dramatic reduction in cost. Commercial hemorrhage control simulators can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In contrast to that, Bates and his colleagues demonstrated that effective training models could be produced at a fraction of that cost using commonly available supplies. This makes large-scale implementation feasible even for units with limited training budgets, so you could train more individuals for less money. So the next example of a low fidelity model in action is that of the cricothyroidotomy and needle coke task trainer. This one's especially near and dear to my heart because this was my final project in residency for my sim rotation, and is also the subject of my capstone. The two procedures are clearly important procedures. And the key here is that they're rarely performed, but can be life-saving when required. Because real-world opportunities to practice these are quite uncommon, folks will get maybe one or two in a career. Simulation becomes especially important for maintaining proficiency. As you can see, the task trainer is assembled using simple materials that would be laying around a hospital or a sim center that a resident would have no problem getting their hands on. It's assembled using a box of gloves, some Coban, an ace wrap, some tape, vent tubing, and the gloves within the box. You can see the gloves here kind of represent the lungs, with the piece of the vent tubing coming out of the center of the box. Once the tubing is brought out of the opening of the box is closed and covered with Coban, and then two small pieces of Coban are placed to replicate the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage. A piece of ace wrap is placed over top of the area between the two cartilages, and then it is covered up with additional tape to force the palpation of your landmarks to find the cricothyroid membrane. As I mentioned, this was initially a project that I performed in residency, but on deployment, obviously we had a large block for skill sustainment and training. So I had the opportunity to construct some of these while we were actually downrange and use it to educate the doctors, nurses, and corpsmen, and allow for some additional training on airway skills while we were forward deployed. We were able to build 6 of these models using some of the training material and some things that were about to expire. And the only viable piece of equipment that we actually had to burn was one set of vent tubing. But as we know, those are infrequently used and quite frequently overstocked. The key that the point that this demonstrates is that the trainers can be assembled using simple materials that are inexpensive and widely available. The construction process is super straightforward and does not require any special manufacturing or any real arts and crafts skills, as you can see. This means they can be built locally, they can be replaced easily when they break, and they can be customized to meet training requirements. So this concept has direct relevance to the Department of the Navy. Navy medical teams, Fleet Marine Force corpsmen, and forward deployed providers often operate in environments where access to simulation centers is limited. Low fidelity task trainers provide a practical method for maintaining readiness while minimizing cost, minimizing logistical burden, and minimizing dependence on specialized equipment. By leveraging materials already available within military supply systems, these trainers can improve training accessibility and support operational readiness. In conclusion, low fidelity task trainers offer a cost effective and deployable solution for procedural skill sustainment in austere environments. Although they do not replace or aim to replace high fidelity simulation, they provide a valuable tool for maintaining critical TCCC skills such as hemorrhage control and emergency airway management. As military medicine continues to emphasize readiness as well as resource stewardship, these types of training solutions may help bridge the gap between simulation center training and real world operational requirements. Thank you.